and published and made it available to those who speak Russian. We will also have the chance of discussing the significance of the message of Swami Vivekananda. And we have some very eminent people who have joined us today. And I want to thank of course, the ambassador and his team who have made this possible, and scholars from the Russian side. I also want to thank Kumari Nivedita ji, who is the Vice President of Vivekananda Kendra, and also she is the associated with the Vivekananda International Foundation. She is a great personality, has a deep interest in the philosophy of Vivekananda, and the Vivekananda Kendra, as you know, is doing superb work in the field of education in many parts of the country, particularly in the Northeast, and of course they are present in all over the country. And so thank you, Nivitaji, for being with us today. We also have we just spoke to Swamiji, who is posted in Moscow, and now we also have Jyotir Purvanandaji, who has also joined us, and there are also Arpita Mitra, Dr. Arpita Mitra, who was until recently with the VIF, but she has moved to Asansol in Asansol University there. And she is in fact the author of this booklet. And on the basis of the material supplied to us by Vivekananda Kandra, we had brought out this booklet way back, I think about 2017 or 18. And this booklet we have been using to brief our interlocutors who visit the Vivekananda International Foundation for interactions with us. And I found that many countries, different languages, they all have shown great interest in the life and message of Swami Vivekananda. Of course, life and message of Swami Vivekananda is very large, almost infinite. And we produced this booklet just to satisfy the curiosity of those who visit us regularly and ask a few questions about Vivekananda. So it is during my meeting with the ambassador some time ago when we broached this topic idea of translating this booklet in Russian, and he readily accepted it. And I'm very grateful to him that this booklet has been produced, and I was looking at its production. It's very nicely produced, and I think all the photographs, etc., have come out very nicely, and the translation is also very good. And we hope that with the introduction, with this booklet, now our colleagues and our friends in Russia, they would have some introduction in the Russian language to Swami Vivekananda and his life. So thank you very much, Ambassador, for this very great gesture that you have done to us. Now, I don't want to speak much about Swami Vivekananda because there are others who would be speaking about his significance of his message today. But I just want to outline a very few couple of points, and essentially taking from a few ideas from his celebrated speech at Chicago in actually series of speeches he gave in the Parliament of World Religions in Chicago in 1893, in the 19th century. And those words reverberate with us, not only in India, but in the world, and they have a tremendous resonance and significance even today. Swami Vivekananda, and I'll just take a few quotes, and that really gives us an idea about his the sheer depth and breadth of his vision. He was, of course, the brand ambassador of Indian civilization to the world, of Hinduism, the philosophy of Vedanta, and the Vedanta's spiritual message of oneness at the level of soul and consciousness. He was a believer in harmony and diversity, and he was a great believer in women education and the power and strength of the women. He was an advocate of reason and a critic of superstition and an inspiration for generation of Indians, himself a nation builder and also those who were inspired by his thoughts and ideas. He used to feel that Hinduism should conquer the world, but in the sense that it is the spiritual message of Hinduism which should conquer the world. And if I take a few lines from the celebrated speech in Chicago, just a quotation, he said, and I quote, "Believe we believe not only in universal toleration, but we accept all religions as true." Now, this is a great statement, particularly at a time when there is so much of conflict based on religion. He said, "I am proud to belong to a nation which has sheltered the persecuted and the refugees of all religions and the nations of the earth. I am proud to tell you that we have gathered in our bosom the purest remnants of the Israelites who came to southern India and took refuge with us in the very year in which their holy temple was shattered to pieces by Roman tyranny. I am proud to belong to the religion which has sheltered and is still fostering the remnant of the grand Zoroastrian nation." So this is about the toleration that this country, this religion has shown to others. And of course, is one of the most celebrated ideas which he used to expound and which is a part of Indian thinking is that as the different streams having their sources in different paths, which can make through different tendencies, various though they appear, crooked or straight, all lead to thee. So this again, today when we are racked by identity politics, here is a thought, a very powerful thought, that there may be a manifestation of truth, but ultimately all paths lead to one truth. So this idea of harmony and diversity is also there. Then another thing issue that plagues us today, which is sectarianism, bigotry, etc. And he had this to say on this. He said, "Sectarianism, bigotry, and its horrible descendant, fanaticism, have long possessed this beautiful earth. They have filled the earth with violence, drenched it often and often with human blood, destroyed civilization, and sent whole nation to despair. Had it not been for these horrible demons, human society would be far more advanced than it is now. But the time is come, and I fervently hope that the bell that tolled this morning in honor of this convention may be the death knell of all fanaticism, of all persecution with the sword or with the pen, and of all uncharitable feelings between persons wending their way to the same goal." So here is a very powerful resistance and opposition to sectarianism and bigotry, which bedevils us. And finally, we talk about religion and we see so many religious differences and conflict, etc. And he believed in the greatness of all religions, but at the same time, he would feel that everyone should follow his own religion, his own path. And again, I quote, "The Christian is not to become a Hindu or a Buddhist, nor a Hindu or a Buddhist to become a Christian, but each must assimilate the spirit of the others and yet preserve his individuality and grow according to his own law of growth." So these are the kind of thoughts which he propounded way back in 1893, and they're all extremely relevant today. And I think we need to reflect over them, think about them, because today the world is again experiencing and has been experiencing, is now also experiencing many of these evils. So with those words, I want to again thank all of you, particularly our ambassador in Moscow. And now I request him to kindly make a few remarks.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Arvind Gupta, Director of the Vivekananda International Foundation. Dear colleagues from the VIF, Professor Tatiana Skorotkova, Professor Sergei Sergiani, the representatives, Swamijis of the Ramakrishna Mission, both in India and those of who we know, we have been blessed to know from Moscow, esteemed scholars from India and Russia. Today is indeed a very auspicious day. A very auspicious day. We celebrate the New Year in several parts of India. But what makes India so unique is that many, in fact, most of the celebrations have the same objective, the same spiritual and civilizational objective. We call it by different names, but the objective is absolutely the same. And that is actually the core of what Swami Vivekananda gave to us. What he gave to us was nothing new about India. He awakened that realization, that spiritual renewal, that spiritual coming together for us, for the nation. The individual awakening in him led to the national awakening, and the national awakening today is only getting stronger and stronger. So though it is more than 100 years since we've had the blessings of Swami Vivekananda, his influence, his impact, his teachings, his relevance is only growing. Vivekananda is not unknown in Russia. That is true also through the extraordinarily useful work that the Ramakrishna Mission has done in Moscow and in different parts of Russia. They have a very respected following, a very devoted following, and whenever we have the opportunity to seek their blessings, I think that becomes evident. Greatly respected in the Indian community, greatly respected in the Russian community, and we pay our respects to the Swamijis who carry forward the message of Vivekananda. But I think the Vivekananda International Foundation, VIF, which Dr. Arvind Gupta heads today, has done extraordinarily well in taking the message in the modern India to the modern world. And that was the key mission of Vivekananda back in Chicago or later, that we need to bring India to the world. And that in its own way, director of Dr. Arvind Gupta and his team in the Vivekananda International Foundation are doing that in various ways, in organizing seminars, in publishing books, in bringing scholars together. So therefore, as part of that activity, when Dr. Gupta was in Moscow, he gave us this proposal, and we were, in fact, it is an honor for us to have participated in this exercise. I would like to take this opportunity to thank my colleagues who participated in this effort. The COVID pandemic slightly delayed it by a couple of months, but now it has come out, and it has come out in the rich and the fullness of time, and of course, obviously, it has come out on the day. On a very auspicious day. My Deputy Chief of Mission, Mr. Pradhan, the political wing, the press wing, have all contributed to this, and this is a publication that we are very proud to bring to, but it would not have been possible without the inspiration of Dr. Arvind Gupta, and I'd like to thank him for this occasion. And I must say, this is not just the first time I have been the beneficiary of his, as I say, his advice, his guidance, and if I might add, his friendship over several decades. So this is for me nothing new to be part of a project that is for the larger good. But I think this is indeed one of them. I would like to thank Professor Tatiana Skorotkova for taking this opportunity to be part of this program. Professor Sergei Serebriani has always been supportive of our efforts. These scholars are a small part of what connects India and Russia together in a very special way. Professor Tatiana Skorotkova is a scholar of the Bengal Renaissance. Now, Bengal Renaissance, of which awakened Bengal, awakened India, and awakened the world thereafter. So it is a very special field. It's a very special field of study, and we are very glad that she has joined us today. We have other scholars as well. Professor Serbriani is the director of the Institute for Higher Humanitarian Studies, the Russian State Humanitarian University, author of more than 100 works. He has been a bridge of spiritual and academic contacts between India and Russia for several decades. So we're very happy to be here. Dr. Arkady Nedel is one of the younger scholars. So the new generations are also joining us now in this common endeavor. We have a Hindi teacher, Miss Julia. She's also joined us. India and Russia were occupied different routes, but I think the national awakening had common roots. If you look at the history of India in the 20th century and the history of Russia in the 20th century, they appear to be very different. Of course, they were very different. But the national awakening that took place more than 100 years ago had common roots. And I think the common roots, the common quest for truth that goes beyond the individual, goes beyond the nation, goes beyond a particular time period, but also as the constant search for universal truths. What is from the particular to the larger thing? Something that Vivekananda ji gave us through his life, through his teachings. I think there was a similar revival in Russia as well. So one of the projects that we would like to look at is to see if we can bring scholars on national consciousness, national revival 100, 150 years ago in Russia and in India, and bring this theme together. And we'll see how we can organize an educational event on this. The second aspect is to bring Vivekananda's teachings to be familiar with for the youth of both countries. One of the enduring attractions of Vivekananda is, in fact, unique, is that he remains a youth icon for decades together. Each new generation learns in its own way the teachings of Vivekananda. Even today, millions of people, young people in India, are inspired by Vivekananda's teachings. Of course, we'll take the help of assistance of the Ramakrishna Mission, who are well versed in this. We will see if we can organize some events later in the year in Moscow to see if we can bring together the youth of India and the youth of Russia, both at the academic level, but also at the level of discussion and things like that. So this is indeed a very happy occasion. I'd like to thank Dr. Arvind Gupta again, once again, to give us this opportunity to bring out this publication in Russian. We are bringing India and Russia closer one more step through this publication, and I'm sure this will be of great interest. There'll be copies available in the embassy for us. If there are more copies, please let us know. We will be very happy to do a reprint and provide you as many copies as possible. We will be in touch with our colleagues and friends in the Ramakrishna Mission. Anything that they require from our side, the embassy will be always ready to step forward. With that, sir, thank you very much for giving us this opportunity, and I give the floor back to you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you very much for your kind remarks and some new ideas that you have given in terms of future work. And we'll certainly, from our side, will be very happy to collaborate with you and our Russian friends. I know from my own experience how deep the knowledge of the Orient in Russia is. And when I used to be posted in Moscow, I used to meet some very senior people, members of the Academy of Sciences, scholars, and so on. And so I'm not surprised that even today, the tradition of studying India in its all depth and glory is still is being carried out, because that is very, very important and essential. So now we take this few minutes to release the book formally, and I request Niveta ji, if she has also a copy, if she can just show it to the camera, and we'll hold it for about 5 seconds or so, because our photographer will then just click it. So I think right now, Venkat probably would have it. Yeah. So yes, I think there we are. Yeah, your camera should be a little, closer. I mean, yeah, I think. Maybe you can just push it closer to the camera, Venkat. Okay. So it's a great pleasure to release this book. Kishan, ho gaya? Okay, thank you. So thank you. We'll now proceed with the rest of the program. And now I request Professor Tatiana Skorokhotla for her remarks. She is the professor in Penza State University.
Thank you, respected Dr. Arvind Gupta, respected Your Excellency Ambassador, respected colleagues and friends. I should like to express my gratitude to organizers of this release of great philosopher Swami Vivekananda. Contemporary world needs to discover anew the philosophical heritage of Swami Vivekananda, because most important achievements of his thought have never been so essential and relevant as they are today. When the world meets with the challenges of dissociation, intolerance, alienation of peoples, fundamentalism, and militarism. In this uneasy situation, Vivekananda continues to answer difficult questions by humanity and offers us wise ideas and methods for behavior and action. Studying the Bengal Renaissance, its philosophy and many-sided cultural activity, I have seen in Swami Vivekananda works the deep embodiment of main ideas and meanings of the epoch. From the one hand, it was the epoch of spiritual awakening, based on modern interpretations of ancient heritage, of religious thought, of Upanishads and Bhagavad Gita, as well as on inter-religious dialogue between great religions. From the other hand, the Bengal Renaissance was the historical period of social and cultural development, based on the Indian-Western synthesis of heritage and achievements of both civilizations. And today, Vivekananda reveals to us a lot of forgotten truths of his epoch. It must be emphasized that his influence and philosophy and spiritual life is comparable to that of father of Indian Renaissance, Raja Mohan Rai. Not only had Vivekananda developed religious ideas and wisdom of his teacher Sri Ramakrishna for the world audience, he also reiterates and develops the religious and social thought founded by Ramohan Rai. Often we think about Swami Vivekananda as first of all religious philosopher who have presented Indian religious traditions and have discovered treasury of Indian spirit to all continents on the world. It's true, but this image of Vivekananda conceals the other side of his personality and thought. He is social philosopher and humanist who thinks about human suffering and searches for ways to overcome miseries and to develop humanity in social, cultural, and spiritual aspects. Moreover, social thought by Vivekananda has a religious philosophical origin in his Vedantic views, because the greatness of human is due to divine nature of soul. Therefore, both sides of Vivekananda's philosophy must be rediscovered, reconsidered, and possibly be implemented into contemporary social relations. I should mark Vivekananda's ideas and thought, which have meanings for all humanity. First idea is famous unity in diversity, which appears itself in many, in differences of the universe. The knowledge of the unity and the capability to see one in the diversity of peoples, cultures, religions, societies are the great ground for positive interactions of peoples and understanding each other in the world. Discovered by ancient sages of Upanishads, the truth of unity, according to Vivekananda, must be understood by humanity for destruction of fanaticism, hostility, conflicts, and violence, as well as for development in spiritual and social life. For Vivekananda, diversity of social world implies the imperative of understanding of other. The relationship with other, in general and peculiar sense, was the special theme in the Bengal Renaissance philosophy. The thinkers and reformers felt the necessity of interaction with the multiplicity of others from the West through understanding and dialogue. And Vivekananda was one of these philosophers of dialogue. Need for other was for him an important part of human life. And at the same time, he saw all difficulties of understanding. But an effort of understanding opens new perspectives of vision, both other and own. Based on his own personal experience of understanding of the West, Westerners, their countries and cultures, Vivekananda justified the imperative of understanding and dialogue in a broad sense. And the first condition for dialogue is wish to overcome different obstacles from cultural stereotypes and prejudices to a blind imitation of others, and then to acknowledge deep equality of each other. If in 19th century Vivekananda offered Indians to understand the West and themselves for perspective development, then in the contemporary world, his proposal has universal significance. In the context of the East, the West interaction, philosopher created idea of mutual learning of different civilizations from each other for mutual benefits. To understand and learn is one side of interaction with the other. Another side is an ability to share its own achievements and with everyone who wish to understand and imbibe them. The broad general sense of this idea by Vivekananda is that each people, each culture, each country have its own wealth and achievements to give other for mutual development. The idea of mutual learning in dialogue becomes special means to settle contemporary problems in global interaction of societies and peoples. Moreover, Vivekananda teaches that dialogue is most adequate ground for human interaction, but human and societies must learn to conduct dialogue. The key idea of the Bengal Renaissance humanism was the thought about human suffering in society and claim for necessity to fight against social evil. The problem of social evil was elaborated in lectures and works by Vivekananda for the world and Indian audience. He was uncompromising critic of social ills in Indian society, but also he thought about universal phenomena of social ills and human suffering. He literally anticipated Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi when said, then fight against social evil must begin from improving of human inner world. Basic foundation of Vivekananda's treatment laid in notion of social origin of evil, based on act of free human will. Social evils and the problems they cause are universal, only forms of its appearance differentiate. Each society in the West and in the East has its own problems to overcome, but Vivekananda was firmly convinced that in necessity to work against the evil. First of all, by work of education. He substantiates the responsibility of each society for its own miseries and problems, poverty and decline. Therefore, the society must have a will to overcome evils and take on responsibility for it. Considering Indian social situation, Vivekananda offered balanced method of constructive reforming, which is relevant for each society that wishes to preserve its original cultural values and institutes and to develop in contemporary global world. Vivekananda calls to follow the main theme of national life and save it, but bravely refuse from dead and lifeless social forms and constraints. He believes the religious ideas create the spirit and ground for human and social development, but want from fanaticism and violence for any good ends. Thinking about Indian life and possibility of his own society, Vivekananda have arisen the themes and questions having lived interest for majority of 20th century societies. Themes of freedom and dignity of human, universality of spiritual life and human search for truth, dialogue and common meaning of different religions, necessity of enlightenment for downtrodden masses, and many, many others, permit to say about him as outstanding philosopher of modernity. But in contemporary global world, his philosophy takes on the new meaning owing to his opposition for attempts to restore archaic practices and thinking, to return societies into imagined past, isolation and total dependency from tradition, and so on. Main philosophical idea for Vivekananda was human liberty. Therefore, our contemporaries in all countries must remember his brilliant rule: let man have the light of liberty. That is the only condition of growth. Thank you for your attention.
Sir, your mic is off.
Okay, sorry about that. I was thanking Professor Tatiana Skorakotka for our interpretation of the message of Swami Vivekananda, and we really learned something from her analysis. Now I request Kumari Nivedita ji to kindly make her remarks.
My namaskars to you all, and also prayers that let this coming new year be very auspicious for all of us, for the whole humanity. When we look at the life of Swami Vivekananda, that is the journey of Narendranath Datta to Swami Vivekananda, a world teacher, we see mainly it in three phases. One is that whatever may be your education, scholarship, But ultimately, that realization of oneness, that divinity, that the same divine is pervading everywhere, is important. And that is what Swami Vivekananda had it at the feet of his Guru, Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. Now, when we feel that divinity is everywhere, that same thing, one has become many, that feeling for the people, that love for the people, that is what is the second stage, and that we see in the life of Swami Vivekananda when he went around the country. In those days, India was in utter penury, utter ignorance. Seeing the suffering of his people, loss of confidence, when he also found that surely India has certain great truth to contribute for the progress of the humanity. And that is where, sitting at the rock at Kanyakumari, in the mid-sea rock, he took the decision that he shall go to the west and represent the Sanatana principles, the eternal principles which are needed for the progress of the humanity of Hindu Dharma. And he shall also collect some money and come and start some service activity. So that is the second phase. The third phase we see, as he went to America and then later to European countries he traveled, he saw that everywhere it is the same man who is striving to understand what is he, what is the meaning of life, what is the purpose of life. Maybe our paths are different, but it is the same suffering everywhere. And that is where his mission becomes a global mission. His message becomes for the message for whole humanity. And really we can see that the destiny provided a grand global platform to Swami Vivekananda to give his message in Parliament of Religion, when a very thinking, practicing, various religious leaders, thought leaders had assembled there. And it was not, as we know, just a one-day affair, but it went on from 11th September 1893 to 27 September 1893. So while interacting with all those great leaders and participating in the Parliament of Religion, Swami Vivekananda realized that it is a world mission. He also saw, as it was mentioned earlier also by Professor Tatiana, that the world is passing through various problems and they need to be addressed if the journey of human progress is to proceed further. One is, of course, the religious fanaticism. That is, my God alone is true and all other gods are not true. That is where, it is limiting the God consciousness or limiting the infinite to finite. That is to maybe one name, one path, or one book, which is not going to help for peaceful coexistence, for acceptance of each other, for mutual respect towards each other's diverse paths. So that was first thing. Second thing, also he saw that somewhere we have a vision of division, whereas the truth of existence is the whole existence is interrelated, interconnected and interdependent. It is one which has become many. Just like in body, it is the one life, but there are various cells, each cell having its own life, and yet it is a one body, one life. So, as Swamiji very powerfully has said in one place, the truth does not pay homage to society. The society has to pay homage to truth or perish. That is, truth is not going to change because the society or the human being doesn't like to be concerned about others and he wants to be selfish. The truth is not going to change. We are all interconnected, interrelated, interdependent. And therefore, when we say I or a human being, the expanded form of a human being is his family. Still expanded form is society, the nation, and the whole civilization, the whole human society, and the whole creation. So we are all interconnected, interrelated, interdependent. But unfortunately, he saw in the academia, it has become a practice to understand any issue only in adversarial relations. So it is always a individual against a society, or a man against a woman, or faithful against the unfaithful, or we against they, and like that. So many divisions. It's a vision of division, which is a problem. And actually, we need to inculcate the vision of oneness. Oneness doesn't mean uniformity, but oneness means like in body, there is one life, but there are different organs, and each organ has its own place. Each organ has its own function. So same way Swami Vivekananda saw the whole humanity, in which there are various civilizations, and each civilization has something to contribute to the good of the humanity. If that is understood, a person can be intensely patriotic. At the same time, he can be a great humanist because he is working in the interest of the humanity. At the same time, he understands that what is it that his country or his civilization has to contribute for the good of the humanity. Another problem that he saw was gross materialism, which was becoming slowly, and which has still become, as we see, that everything is defined in the parameters of what is it I get, or the money, or what is it that I have. Human life has some higher purpose that itself, if it is forgotten, the whole human life starts getting degraded. It becomes selfish, and then man exploits the society, he depletes the nature, and all the problems, whether environmental issue, whether social problems, all start with that. Disintegration of the communities, of the families, that is another problem that he saw. And because of that, somewhere the end justifies the means. To that conclusion man had come. Anything, if I want this, by somehow I can get it. So the end justifies the means. Whereas the human life is such that if you pay attention to the means, the end is inherent in the means. In the path itself, you get the happiness of your ultimate destination. So that is what was lost. And that is how Swami Vivekananda, some very important message that if we see, in that one, he says that each soul is potentially divine. The goal of life is to manifest that divinity by controlling the nature external and internal. Very important message. He says the human life is not just we have come, so we enjoy for something, we go on aspiring something, we are expecting something, then we suffer, we break down, and that's how ultimately the life ends. It's not like that. As it is said, man does not live by bread alone, but there is some higher dimension, and it is that divine nature man has to realize. That is the ultimate aim of human life. But how it is done? It is by controlling the nature external and internal. How is my behavior with others? In that others, everyone is included. Even nature is included. And how is my inner thoughts? So controlling the nature external and internal. Then he says, do this either by work or worship, by psychic control or knowledge, by one or more or all, and be free. That is, there are various ways to realize one's divine nature. And he did not just talk by saying that, but he's one of the greatest contribution, as we know, that he introduced yoga to the West. Whether it is Raja Yoga, whether Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, which he has mentioned in this, by psychic control or knowledge or devotion or action, all that is, he contributed that. Another very important thing which has happened with Swamiji's contribution was that his lectures on Vedanta, as we know, in one of the lectures, even Nikola Tesla himself was present. He came just to be there for some 10 minutes, but then he got so engrossed that he stood for 2.5 hours. And later also he interacted with Swamiji, and he said, yes, energy and matter are interconvertible. The Swamiji's lecture was on Akash and Prana, and that is how he correlated it with energy and matter. And he said, I shall prove it that they are interconvertible. But we know later Einstein did it. But Swamiji's lecture on Vedanta became a great intellectual trigger for later, as we see, in quantum physics and quantum mechanics. So this is another, he is one of the great contribution. One more thought which has inspired India to, especially the people of India, to come out and work for the society is Swami Vivekananda says, they alone live who live for others. The rest are more dead than alive. This is what he had learnt it at the feet of his Guru also. While coming out of his Samadhi, Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa had told, who are we to show compassion to the people? Jiva Daya. He says, it is Shiva Bhave Jiva Seva. That is, serve man, serve God. God is not somewhere sitting in corner in the heaven, but he is here around you, the living God, the suffering God, or the, as he called, Daridra Narayana Bhava, that is the poor God, the ignorant God. You serve him, and they alone live who live for others. The rest are more dead than alive. This is a very strong statement. Now, why is it like that? Because our expanded form is our society, is our whole, this humanity, is the nature. If we do not pay attention to that and we are living only for ourselves, it is actually, we are not living fully. We are not living wholesomely. And that is why Swami Vivekananda said, and it is this message of Swami Vivekananda which has moved many, and people have gone to the length and breadth of this land, working for the poor and the fallen and the downtrodden. And that is what has helped the regeneration of India. So whether it was in freedom movement, whether it was in the service of the poor, or going in very inaccessible areas, that is tribal areas in mountains and jungles, people went and served. So his message is not something like academic, but it really moves the people to action. And that action is always in the interest of the society, interest of the humanity. That is what, just one thought I will mention, that how Swamiji is so relevant. Means many thoughts are mentioned, but one thought I thought I will just mention. Swamiji said, a bird cannot fly with one wing. He needs two wings. And that is how the men and women both should have equal education, equal freedom to decide the path in life by which they will contribute to the society. And that is how, in those days, he had faith in women. Someone asked Swamiji that, what is your message for women? He said, why? It is same like for the men. Believe in yourself, believe in your people, believe in your culture, and work for others. That's how Swami Vivekananda said. When someone went and asked him about some problems of women, what you have got to say? Then he was forthright. He immediately told, are you a woman, or am I a woman that you are discussing this problem with me? Just free education for the women. Let them have education. They are capable enough to solve their problems. So in a real sense, we see whether it is environment, whether it is humanism, whether it is, working for the masses, whether it is the women, or whether it is the inspiration to the youth to make the life purposeful. Swami Vivekananda's message has always been very relevant. I will just conclude by quoting one book which is written by Eleanor Stark. She is one American. She wrote a book, Unopened Gift. The Gift Unopened. That is the name of the book. She says, the Providence brought a great gift, in the form of Swami Vivekananda to us. But unfortunately, even today, we have not opened the gift and practiced it. So I am really very happy to be part of today's function, where we are releasing the book, which is translated in Russian. And I am sure this association will go on increasing further and further. With these few words, I conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, Nivedita ji, for that inspiring talk in which you have summarized the message of Swami Vivekananda, be it spiritual message or his practical message. Thank you very much for those words. Now I request Dr. Arpita Mitra, who is Associate Professor at the Qazi Nazrul University. And as I said, she's the original author of this book in English. So, Arpita.
Namaste, everyone. One day in Belur Math, it was 2 o'clock at night, and one of Swamiji's brother disciples, Swami Vivekananda, suddenly came to Swamiji's room and found that he's awake. So he asked him, Swamiji, what is the matter? Are you not able to sleep? Swamiji said, see, Peshon, I mean, that's how he used to call Vigyan Maharaj. See, Peshon, I was sleeping all right, but suddenly there was a jolt and I woke up and I'm unable to sleep. I think some kind of an accident or something has happened somewhere and people are suffering. Vivekananda just thought that some accident has happened somewhere and he's unable to sleep. I mean, how is that possible? The next morning, Vivekananda ji came to know from the news that around that time, when it was 2 o'clock in India, a volcanic eruption had happened in the island of Fiji, and many human beings had died, and many others were injured and they were suffering. So Vigyan Maharaj's observation was that Swamiji's nervous system was much, much more sensitive than the most sophisticated seismographic machine when it came to feeling human suffering. It was not just a question of theory or doctrines with him. It was true feeling. We all know that Swamiji had such a personality, it was an awe-inspiring personality. Anybody who would look at him, that leonine, kingly personality, and it would inspire awe in everybody. But the same Vivekananda, when he was roaming around India, he would sit with the day laborers by the roadside, perhaps even partake of their hookah and chat with them. It was a completely different person, as if he was one among them, he was one with them. So when Vivekananda talks about oneness, I mean, it is not mere talk, it is something else. He had once told one of his other brother disciples, Swami Turiyanandaji, that I do not know how far I have progressed on the path of spirituality, but I can say this much, that I am able to feel a lot. I'm weeping profusely for everybody. Again, on a different occasion, in a meditative mood, he had remarked, I do not want mukti. Mukti is salvation or liberation. I do not want mukti. Till the day all living beings attain salvation, till that day, I have to come again and again. And we know his famous words. He had said, I'll have to be born again, for I have fallen in love with man. My subject today is Vivekananda's Universalism. What can be more universal than love? But one thing we need to understand is that it is love only when it is universal. If it is for a select few, it is attachment. It is love only when it is for everybody. Having said that, what is the source of Vivekananda's universalism? It is the fact, rather the truth, that everything in this universe comes from one same source, one single source. We Hindus call that common source Brahman. Others may call it by any other name. Religion is also something universal. It is a universal science. Christianity, Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, Sikhism, Judaism, these are different names we have given to different manifestations of the same universal principles on which religion is based. And one of the most universal principle of religion is non-injury. Swamiji explains what is the basis of this principle of non-injury. The basis is the truth that I and my brother are one. Therefore, in injuring my neighbor, I am injuring myself in another form. It is the realization of the oneness of the universe that is the basis of Vivekananda's universalism. It is from this standpoint that he also embraced universal acceptance, be it between nations, between the East and the West, high and low, different classes of people, man and woman, Hindus or Christians. So this universalism cuts across all man-made differences, because after all, differences are social constructs. They are not the ultimate truth. Swamiji says that the goal of human life is freedom. This is once again a universal goal. Every single being in this universe is striving for freedom. Its manifestation is different, but every single being is striving for freedom. When we are inventing new machines, we are striving for freedom. When somebody is meditating and wants liberation, he or she is striving for freedom. A monk is also striving for freedom. A householder is also striving for freedom. Only their methods are different, their paths are different. A human being is also striving for freedom. An insect, a worm, is also striving for freedom. So the goal, the universal goal of human life is freedom. And if we acknowledge that whatever difference that exists, Swamiji had said that whatever difference we see around us is only a difference in degree, not of kind. Even the man who is performing an evil action is actually going towards the goal of freedom. The difference is that he doesn't know it. And he is trying to have it, acquire it in a certain particular way. A saint will want to acquire it in a different way. So it's only a difference of degree, not of kind. And from here, we get Swamiji's statement that man is not traveling from error to truth, but from truth to truth, from lower truth to higher truth. This is so because no error can lead to truth. I mean, I think this principle is completely unheard of. Before Swamiji, we all thought that, okay, today we commit a mistake and tomorrow we'll realize our mistake. He says there's nothing called mistake. There's nothing called error. What we are thinking as error, from tomorrow's standpoint, it was a stepping stone. No error can lead to truth. So it is definitely truth which is leading to another truth. A lower truth is leading to a higher truth. Now, where did Vivekananda get this practice of universal love? It is not just a preaching, it is a practice of universal love and Catholicity from. The example before him was his own guru, Sri Ramakrishna, who was equally, Catholic and universal in his compassion and love. Swamiji used to say about his guru that he is love personified. Swamiji's own disciple, Swami Sadananda, said that Swamiji is love personified. So they reflect the same principle in practice. Before concluding, I would like to read out an excerpt from a letter he wrote to E.T. Sturdy in 1895. Doubtless I do love India, but every day my sight grows clear. What is India, or England, or America to us? We are the servants of that God who by the ignorant is called man. He who pours water at the root, does he not water the whole tree? There is but one basis of well-being, social, political, or spiritual, to know that I and my brother are one. This is true for all countries and all people. And Westerners, let me say, will realize it more quickly than Orientals, who have almost exhausted themselves in formulating the idea and producing a few cases of individual realization. So Swamiji's message is basically India's message to the world. It is a common inheritance of the entire humankind, not of India alone. India must live not just for her own sake, but for the entire world. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Arpita, for those remarks in which you have emphasized the universalism of Swamiji's ideas, and especially mentioning love and freedom. And these cannot be so unless they are universal themselves. I think those are very useful pointers to Swamiji's thinking. Thank you so much. Now I open up this for some brief discussion, but before that I invite Professor Sergei Serbriani to kindly make his remarks.
Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Professor.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to thank the organizers of this meeting for inviting me. Well, I'm not at all a specialist in Swami Vivekananda, though I have had personal connections with the Ramakrishna mission and even stayed for about 3 months at the Ramakrishna Mission Institute of Culture in Gol Park in Calcutta many years ago, and visited some places connected with Ramakrishna and Vivekananda. It's, of course, a very important event that a book like this should appear in Russian. I have not yet seen the Russian translation, but I have been able to see the original in English through the kindness of Mrs. Yulia Franzuzova, who sent me an electronic copy. This book and what I have just heard at this webinar, if I may say so, have shown to me once again that India and Russia, well, are very much worlds apart. And the book, I'm afraid, well, I say it's an important event. As far as I know, we don't have any books or big books about Vivekananda in Russian. Many years ago, back in the 1930s, the book by Romain Rolland was translated from French, but it is hardly read now. So this may be called really the first book in Russian about Vivekananda. But let me say from the very beginning, for me, it's rather a strange book. First of all, there is no author. Who has written this book? You know, we in Russia, we are accustomed that books have authors. And this book looks like a, I don't know, some divinely inspired text so that no author is indicated. My first critical remark about the book is that it is, so to say, it is written too much from some internal point of view, if I may say so. We again in Russia, with our 20th century experience in particular, we are accustomed to have, well, so to say, a multidimensional approaches to problems and many views expressed on one and the same subject. Here, Vivekananda is presented, well, as a kind of saint. It's a kind of gospel, but even Christian gospels had authors. Well, so this is a just critical remarks about the book. So, but I hope it is only a beginning, and in the future more books, and I hope more multidimensional books will appear on Swami Vivekananda. Coming to Swami Vivekananda himself, well, he belongs not only to another culture, I mean, a culture different from ours. He belongs to another historical epoch. And I'm sorry to say, to a bygone time. His, to use now a fashionable word, discourses, his discourses look very, what should I say? Well, historically distant from us. Even from me, though I'm very much connected with India, and I have read many Indian texts, and I hope I understand India slightly better than the majority of my compatriots. But even I cannot help feeling that the book, the life and the views of Swami Vivekananda now are rather dated. They belong to another historical period, as I have said. To take just one point, which has been discussed very much right now, the idea that all religions are true. Incidentally, I prefer this saying or the opinion ascribed to Gandhiji, I mean Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, that all religions are true, but all are imperfect. By the end of the 19th century, many people, well, quite a number of eminent people, did in fact think that, well, all religions are true, or all religions contain one and the same truth. For instance, in Russia, these views were expressed repeatedly by our great writer, Lev Tolstoy. And even though I admire Tolstoy as a writer and respect him as a thinker, I can't agree 100% with him now. Of course, from some higher philosophical viewpoint, all religions may be considered true, or equally false, if you like. But the problem is that it's difficult to persuade the practitioners of specific religions that that religions that they perceive as different are really equally true. For instance, how would you explain to Christians that Jesus Christ was not a unique phenomenon, well, in world history? Or how would you explain to devout Muslims that the Prophet Muhammad has been not the unique person with the unique message, and that the words in the Holy Quran are the final expression of the divine truth? Well, you may write volumes proving that the message of Christ and the message of Muhammad are the same, but you would hardly be able to persuade the real practitioners of these religions that this is so. You know, with my Soviet upbringing, and I have lived most of my life in the Soviet Union and got educated, I got this so-called Soviet education. We were taught that all traditional religions belong to the past, actually, and they cannot be taken seriously now. Well, I don't believe in everything that I was taught during my Soviet school and university years. But I do think that now we live in what is called a post-religious time. Academically, we can analyze all traditional religions and find many common denominators among them. Say, well, it's a very respected academic pursuit. But I'm afraid it has very little practical consequences for real religious life of the majority of mankind. What else? Well, sorry for sounding so critical, but you see, my own experience as a Soviet citizen, so we were taught that all traditional religions, well, are not true. And later we came to think that the official religion of the Soviet Union, the so-called Marxist-Leninism, was also not true. And we really feel that we live in a historical time where all well, traditional religions, traditional viewpoints, they should be respected. As you know, one Catholic theologian once told me, do you want to claim that people who professed all these religions were stupid or were at least less clever than you? How can you claim this? So with all humility, I do think that traditional religions, all of them, may contain one way or another, maybe to different degrees, some very important truths. But now mankind as a whole lives through quite another, well, should I say, historical time. It's not, and let me repeat, I think it's useless to claim that all the religions are true. It may be true, but it's not so important as it sounds. Well, sorry, I have started to repeat myself. But anyhow, let me stress once again that I do in the relations between Russia and India, but I also do hope that this is just a beginning of a very long process, that many more books about Swami Vivekananda and about other Indian persons and matters should appear to make the Indo-Russian or Russian-Indian relations and mutual understanding deeper and, well, deeper, yes. Thank you. And sorry for my straightforwardness.
Thank you very much, Professor Sebriani, for those remarks. And I think it's only through these kind of discussions that we progress in reaching the truth. And it is precisely what I think the so-called, the way Hinduism has progressed and flourished is really by asking difficult questions. So this is not at all amiss, and there are many people in this audience who could react to some of the key points that you have made. But we don't have so much time to go into all of this. But let me open this for a discussion, and if we still have maybe about about 10 minutes, Venkat? How many minutes do we have? I think we are a little bit.
It's about 10 minutes, 10 minutes discussion.
We can take another 10 minutes or so. And if anybody wishes to react to what Professor Sebriani said or wants to make any additional comments, that is welcome. But
Can
we
I
make
respond?
this brief? Yeah, can you make this brief? Yes, Arpita, please go ahead.
Yes, I just want to respond briefly to Professor Sebriani. You know, this problem with Christian theology, that how do you proceed without accepting that Christ is a unique manifestation of Godhead? This was recognized by Christian theologians themselves. And that is why eventually from an exclusivist fold to an inclusivist fold, which talked about anonymous Christians, finally Christian theologians moved into a pluralist fold, And the most prominent theologians of this fold, they say that the only way of circumventing this problem is to accept the impersonal nature of Godhead. Paul Tillich, a very famous Christian pluralist theologian, talks about God above God. It is only when we accept that, then it will solve the crisis in Christianity itself, because Christianity was also going through a crisis. And Nivedita had remarked that it is Vedanta which is going to save Christianity in Europe. If we think of Vedanta as a sect, then it will not work. Vedanta is not a sect. It is a universal principle. We just call it by that name. You can call it by some other name. So coming back to Paul Tillich, he said that it is only when we accept this idea, we means Christians, accept this idea of God above God, then the crisis within Christianity will also be solved, and the crisis of Christianity with other religions will also be solved. And incidentally, all Christian pluralist theologians accept this. John Hake, Wilfred Cantwell Smith, and it is such. So fortuitous, Swami Vivekananda had also said that it is only from the standpoint of Advaita, non-dualism, that we can look upon all religions and all sects of the world from the idea, from the feeling of fraternity, from the feeling of brotherhood. So this is a long discourse actually, but I just tried to answer it briefly, that this debate, this has also been an internal debate. Even Christian theologians have been thinking about it.
Thank you. Thank you, Arpita, for those remarks. Anyone else would like to come in at this stage?
Yes, maybe.
Yes, please.
Hello, yes.
Yes,
Can I-
Mr. Akadi. Yes, please go ahead.
Yes. So I'm first of all, I'm very pleased to be here, and thank you very much, Yulia Franzuzova and other organizers of this event. I think working during many times on Indian philosophy and comparative philosophy, I would like to say that Vivekananda, of course, was much ahead of his time, because he launched his activity in the very end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century. I remember that ahead of his activity, there were two world wars, first and second, which was absolutely devastating and anti-human. And Vivekananda, in a sort of, he previewed, he announced his warnings, and he said to, during his journey in the United States and Europe and India also, he was maybe one of few voices which announced, articulated this absolute necessity for all humans, for humanity, to be careful and to be respectful to each other. I think there are two, of course, I mean, it's quite obvious, but just let me repeat, there are two sources of Vivekananda spiritual revolution, I would say. First of all, it's Advaita Vedanta, of course, the philosophy of Adi Shankara, which is one of the top intellectual achievements during the intellectual in the world. And Shankara, Advaita Vedanta Shankara, Ramanuja, Abhinavagupta, and maybe early medieval Buddhism. Of course, Vivekananda was Shankara's disciple in a sense, but I think he made many important things for contemporary for the contemporary world, for the world of the end of 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, because to promulgate and make universally known the idea that one or oneness is the source of everything, of any religion, of any intellectual debates, is absolutely was I think was a he was a I mean the man who had a great courage at the time. So this is why I am absolutely delightful about the publication of this book, and I see nothing to be critical of. So this is philosophical aspect of Vivekananda. I think, of course, I said Shankara, but it goes back to Upanishad, to the authentic Indian wisdom. You remember, we all remember this phrase "Tattvam Asi" from Chandogya Upanishad, which means you are this. It means one. Yes. And another thing is his political aspect of his philosophy, of his activity, social activity, is, I stress here, India herself, because I think that India gives us a unique, absolutely marvelous example of coexistence of many nations, many languages, many religions, intellectual movements, etc., in one, I would say, geographical, geopolitical place. India, I would even say that India is not a country. India is a civilization, and India, of course, has much to teach us, the rest of the world. In spite of all this, all of course, I understand all social, political, and economic problems, but India is absolutely unique in this sense. It is really one. It is a one civilization where this ideology of ahimsa, this idea that human life is not just a word or a concept borrowed from political language, but it is something which is really unique. India gives us such an example, I think, and Vivekananda is, in that sense, Vivekananda is on the one hand, Vivekananda, of course, is an example of intercultural philosophy. We just yesterday we at the Institute for Philosophy in Moscow, I discussed with colleagues what does it mean intercultural philosophy today, because this is very there's a big trend now, which is discussed everywhere, and Vivekananda, of course, is an intercultural philosophy. But on the other hand, he is extremely Indian. His framework he's a kind of incarnation or manifestation, let me say so, of Indian uniqueness, because there is no other country such India, which really demonstrates this oneness and differences at the same time in the same manner. So to conclude, I'm absolutely delightful about the publication of the book. My felicitation and congratulations to all who participated in this work. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think now we are come to the end of this session. We could have carried on this debate, and I request the ambassador to perhaps organize another seminar, a webinar, and with the Russian scholars and amongst us, and maybe we could eke out some of these ideas. But it's been a very interesting 1.5 hours that we have spent, and I want to once again thank the ambassador for his initiative. and for igniting this debate about the Indian philosophy and the relevance of the message of Swami Vivekananda. And of course, the whole idea of publishing this book and about talking about Vivekananda is that we still feel that it's his message is extremely relevant in this conflict-ridden, violence-ridden world, which is most of the source of this conflict and misery is because of the sense of other. And he shows us a way which is through the unity at the level of to the extent of seeing divinity in everything. I think that's a very, very powerful idea. It's very relevant even today. So we'll continue to discuss. Yes. So now I hand it over back to the Embassy of India, Moscow, if they want to say something last words.
So thank you so much. This is Binay here, Deputy Ambassador from Mission. Ambassador just had to leave for another meeting, sir. But from our side, sir, we will take your advice and points. We will carry it forward, sir. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today, and particularly our panelists, Kumari Nivedita ji and Tatiana ji and Arpita. Thank you very much for contributing to this discussion and debate.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.